And we're live for XYZ number 16. I'm here with my co-host, David Hiscox. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live stream. I hope you have a really fantastic week. It's been a pretty big week in news and all that kind of thing. So we've just got a few of the big topics for you today. Dave, how's it going, mate? Thanks for joining us again, as always.
Going really well. Thanks well, it's always good to be here, Matty. Matty, there's something wrong with your head. Usually, there's this, I usually see something brown and yellow, like there's nowhere to be seen. What's going on?
I don't know what you're talking about.
There's usually something on your mug. It's I don't know, like it's weird.
I don't know what you're talking about, David.
Let me be a bit more specific in that case. Like on the weekend, Melbourne won and Hawthorn lost.
There was football on the weekend. I didn't really.
I don't think that's happened since about 1973. But
I can't remember. I can't remember watching any football on the weekend. I don't know what you're talking about.
You can run, Matty, but you can't hide. Is Melbourne above Hawthorn on the ladder now? Like we must be pretty close to you. We had a big win.
I don't know. I haven't. I forgot that there was even football on this weekend.
You haven't even looked. You haven't taken your bat, your ball, and gone home. It's like stupid game.
I was at the game on Friday night.
It was a good match. It was a really good match.
Well, it was
a
hard-fought game. It was fantastic for Sydney supporters.
Yeah.
The Hawks deserved to win. We were robbed, absolutely robbed, by our own feet and the umpires.
Yeah,
we were by ourselves and the umpires at the same time. It wasn't a complete daylight robbery. It was nighttime blizzard robbery. They just missed chances right at the end. Really easy chances through the game as well. They missed a few directly in front, just missed goals. A lot of missed tackles. This new kid Ronk, who scored 7 goals on us. Because our backline just don't know how to tackle for some reason. Our backline's horrendous. We basically got half a backline. We got Stratton, what's his name? James Sicily, and Hardwick's decent as well. And the other 3 are just nothing. They're nowhere. So I thought we were the best team. We had doubled. Nah, we're missing Rioli. We're missing a few good players. We actually doubled their inside 50 count as well and still lost. That's how horrendous our backline is.
Sydney are treacherous. You can never take them for granted. Like you got to be 10 goals up with about 5 minutes to go, and then you can start breathing easy.
I was never relaxed, even though we were 2 goals up, because we were 2 goals up, and I believe we missed two chances that weren't hard chances while we were 2 goals up. So 9 points, so 2 goals up.
Do you know who I blame? Actually, it was you weren't there, like you weren't watching on television. So, but. It was a commentator's fault. I was watching it. It was 5 minutes to go, and the commentators were like, well, Sydney will need to kick 3 goals from here if they're going to win. So, and then sure enough, bang, bang, bang. So
and one of those was a mark inside 50 after the guy kicked the ball 10 metres. So well done to the umpire there. Also, good on the umpires giving them a centre clearance every single time from free kicks. It's like a Hawthorn player grabs the ball, gets tackled, holding the ball. Like, he just instantly tackled and they give it holding the ball. Like, the umpires were horrendous. There was a couple of times. Yeah. Well, there was one time in the last quarter where Sydney players picked the ball up and walked out of bounds. For some reason, that wasn't deliberate, even though he wasn't under any pressure at all.
Mm-hmm.
And there were decisions like that the whole time. So Hawthorn kind of lost it. The umpires were pretty horrendous. They've been pretty bad this year, to be fair.
Yeah. Matty, you're beautiful when you're angry.
Beautiful, am I? You enjoy my frustration.
I could just keep you talking about this. It's quite enjoyable. It doesn't quite make up. It doesn't quite make up for getting flogged by Hawthorn a few weeks back, but it's
I'm not upset. I'm not angry. I'm just very disappointed. That's all.
Disappointed, yes. Yeah. See this smile is going to be on my face the whole life.
Well, you better wipe it off because Melbourne aren't making the finals this year.
Oh, we'll be there. I think it'll be. I think Melbourne and Hawthorn could play in a elimination final, and Melbourne will knock you guys out. That's my prediction.
That's a big prediction right there.
Yeah, 6 versus 7. We'll be 7, you'll be 6, and then
you've just sort of thrown me into a nightmare. This is a nightmare scenario. If that happens, I don't know what I'll do. I'll be distraught. We'll have to cancel the live stream.
That's all right. I'll do the live stream myself. It'll just be me singing Melbourne
That's
Football Club theme song for about an hour and a half.
Oh,
Yeah.
anyway, we better get off the footy because I didn't actually watch any footy over the weekend. It was, it was one of those weekends when I just didn't get around to it. I don't know what happened. Anyway, so we got some really great topics for today, as the title of the stream suggests. So we were talking about the Australian budget, and I wanted to talk about a letter that Pauline Hanson sent to Bill Shorten, which was quite funny. So, but we'll start off. It was actually the age-old, wonderful individual who's responsible for so much misery and suffering. It was his 200th birthday during the week. That man is Karl Marx, probably the single most disgusting individual in human history. I don't think there's been any other individual responsible for more misery and suffering. However, the left-wing media just couldn't get enough of him, of telling everyone how great this guy was, and apparently he can do no harm, and communism's never been tried, and yeah, all that kind of thing. So did you read any of the articles over there, David, his flog?
That's yeah. No, but it's, you just make the comparison straight away. Like, if we had put up an article celebrating Adolf Hitler's birthday, what do you think would happen to the XYZ? Karl Marx is responsible for the deaths of 100 to 150 million people, and these people are celebrating him. And it just shows their mindset. It shows just either they're stupid, either they think that like communism is not responsible for all these deaths, or they're evil. Where like communism is responsible for all these deaths, but they still hold to these ideas. It's crazy.
Yeah, so they're either pathologically lying to themselves, or they're horrendously, they're malevolent. So it's one or the other. Like you'd have to think it is one or the other. They either are flat out lying to themselves and complete ignorant, like they're completely ignorant of history, or they're just malevolent, which is, all three of them are equally bad in their own way. I guess maybe ignorance is more forgivable than malevolence, but a lot of the time I think it's willful ignorance. And I actually heard one thing. I watched a full presentation on Karl Marx yesterday, and I learned something very, very interesting, which is probably one of the most ironic things in history that I've seen, that is. And that is that Karl Marx was a horrendous anti-Semite and racist. He hated black people.
He was a Semitic anti-Semite?
No, he hated Jewish people and he hated black people.
But he was Jewish as well. Or like,
are you sure he was Jewish though?
Because his parents were of Jewish background, but they converted to Catholicism or something like that.
Yeah. So what it was is he basically preached for the genocide of the financial class. So the genocide of the moneylenders. Yeah. And in the 19th century, as I'm sure you know, the moneylenders, as I believe a lot of them are these days, were Jewish. So he basically called for the genocide of the Jews, Karl Marx, which is, and it's not, that's like, obviously that's not the only people he's called for the genocide of. He's called for the genocide of a lot of individuals. And it's funny when people say, oh, well, communism hasn't been tried, communism, blah, blah, blah. It's just, misapplication. But it's not a misapplication because Karl Marx literally said that genocide was the way to world revolution, and he genocide of specific groups of people as well. So it's funny when all these Marxists complain about racism when their idol was a fairly vile racist individual, proper racist too, like actual racist, actually hated people for the color of their skin.
Yeah, well, he wasn't a nice individual at all. Like Vertigo Politics has an excellent video on the life of Karl Marx. He was a drunkard. He would just stay up all night, and he would like just laze about all day, like in a half stupor. He basically scabbed money off his family the whole time. A lot of his so-called research about like factory conditions, he was not there in person. Like he was getting a lot of that information, if not all of that information, secondhand. and a lot of it was outdated or irrelevant and that sort of stuff as well. He like his actual thesis has been described as basically disjointed. Like he lacked the hard work to actually put together like a proper coherent book. It actually makes no sense. And when you try to read it as well, it's so dense, it sends you to sleep. Like I've taken a few key moments from what I've read of Marx, and that just sort of, that's what I need from Marx. And the rest of it, like you try to go through it, it's horrible. Like the guy, like as a person, he was a horrible individual as well, and just lacked any kind of work ethic, any kind of discipline to actually achieve anything. And it's so ironic because like look at like what's come out of that mind, and look at the kind of people who are attracted to that kind of ideology.
Well, that's right. And I mean, here's the thing. Like I've got his book, so I've got as a Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto ready to read. I haven't read them firsthand, so all I can go on is the reviews and
I've given it several attempts. It's horrible.
Yeah,
absolutely horrible.
And here's the thing: the reason I'm worried about it is because I have read the philosophy of his acolytes, so the postmodernism and critical theory, and it is horrendous. It's just so difficult and convoluted and full of
postmodernism is deliberately horrendous.
Yeah, it's just crap. It's all rubbish. The reason I was reading up on critical theory is because I'm making a video right now responding to someone who is criticizing the so-called conspiracy theory of cultural Marxism. Obviously, the video he's made is completely full of logical fallacies, strawman fallacy, especially guilt by association is a big one. But I was reading up on critical theory, so I read these full explanations of what critical theory was, and I'll tell you, it just, a lot of it makes absolutely no sense. It's just blah 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 blah, power structure, blah 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 blah, and that's about it. Ultimately, it's just setting up the world as oppressors and oppressed. So it's the same as Marxism. It expands on Marxism, as in, there's the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. And it expands on that to say, well, it's just all oppressor and oppressed. So it takes the economics of Marx and applies it to social issues, to the wider society. And it's funny because this guy has basically said, well, cultural Marxism is just a myth. It's a conspiracy theory built out of the Frankfurt School. And it's like, well, actually, no, it's not, because the Frankfurt School developed critical theory, and all the current Marxists and feminists take their cues directly from the Frankfurt School and critical theory. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's completely true. And all the ideology now completely fits what critical theory is and what the Frankfurt School taught. Yeah. And yeah, it's just as horrendous as classical Marxism.
In the late 90s and early 2000s, I was at university. One of my best lecturers described himself as being so far to the left that he was almost right. He was a complete communist. Ironically, he worked for the British intelligence service in West Germany on our side during the Cold War. But I think he was one of those smart people who had the ability to, he has beliefs, but he has the ability to argue, okay, for the other side. He definitely had the ability to argue for the other side. He was actually a brilliant lecturer. In the course that I did, which was conducted by him and by some others as well, like they went through all the different theories of politics. And in this course, which was written and delivered by hardcore communists, they talked about cultural Marxism. And they described cultural Marxism exactly the same way that we describe cultural Marxism on the XYZ. We have actual hard copy evidence of leftists talking about cultural Marxism, and we've taken photos, and it's in articles on the XYZ, like this actual evidence of leftists saying what cultural Marxism is.
Actually, I might get that off you because I hadn't finished this video yet. Yeah, that would be really wonderful to be able to put in. Oh, by the way,
absolutely,
here's a hard copy of actual Marxists talking about cultural Marxism.
Oh yeah.
It's
David Hilton's done some great stuff on that. And like we've had a couple of discussions on it. Like it's real. They talked about it. All that happened was we discovered it. We found out what it was. Thanks to the internet, we were like, hey, remember that cultural Marxism they all talked years ago? It's happening. And so now they're all like, oh no, it's just a conspiracy theory. It's
Yeah,
not
of
real.
course, of course. And one of the arguments he makes in this video is, oh, there's a reason that they had to take it off the Wikipedia page and put it on the conspiracy theory page. And it's like, well, Wikipedia is basically a far left front now. It's got a global warming page that just spruiks global warming rubbish. It's not an objective source in any stretch of the imagination. You cannot use Wikipedia as a trusted authority because it's just not. It's not trustworthy. It's not objective even in the slightest.
And if I want trustworthy material, I'd rather go to Poll.
Well, I would trust Poll a lot more because at least on Poll you know what's satire and what's a prank a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Unless
they're far more believable. Far more believable. Far more genuine.
Oh, they are far more genuine. I love 4chan. And I don't know if I've talked about it on the live stream before, but I kind of avoid it because I end up getting stuck there just like talking nonsense. It's like, I can say whatever I want here.
You get the best memes from it. The best.
You get good memes. You get really, really funny stuff. It's fantastic. I actually met a moderator from 4chan once.
Really?
Yeah, full-on moderator.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Did he have 3 heads?
No, and he wasn't a robot. He was actually just a normal nerd. Exactly what you would expect.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the elite. The proper anonymous elite.
Yeah. You saw his face?
I saw his face. I can't remember.
Was he a little cagey about photographs?
Nah, we talked about cryptocurrencies. He'd made a bit of money on.
Of course,
he
talked about cryptocurrency. Of course, he did.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're all over that kind of thing. Cryptocurrency. He gave us some tips, and I took those tips. I hope it wasn't a 4chan prank, but I didn't waste much money, so it doesn't matter.
It's okay to buy Bitcoin.
Well, I've bought Bitcoin. The thing is, Bitcoin, I don't know if Bitcoin's got the right value. We shouldn't be talking too much about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Other than to point out that it is a great way of escaping the other communist arm, the central banks, which is part of the communist aims of dominating the world and taking away our freedom.
Yeah. If I can take the cultural Marxism thing to my pet topic, one of the things that struck me this week, because I did an article on the South American people who are trying to get over the border into the US. There's the Caravan of Saints. And there was a protest where people climbed the wall and they were singing a song which had, they were chanting El Pueblo Unidos Jamás.
Something or other. What does it mean?
It means the people united will never be defeated. The old communist slogan. So yeah, it was communists organizing for the people to get over the wall. The communists pushing mass immigration into the US.
Of course.
Yeah, and it was interesting because like then I was sort of looking up a few the old communist songs and like looking up the words of the Internationale, and like the Internationale talks about how they're going to replace racism, and it occurs to me that like I keep redefining like my definition of racism. Like I've been talking about, like really, like, racism is basically Marxism exploiting race to push its own agenda. I think Marxism, its initial concept of racism was basically the idea that people were living in their own countries and defining themselves by their own ethnic identity, and they wanted to replace that identity with class identity. And so, to me, cultural Marxism is basically classical Marxism. It's basically, as we keep saying, it's classical Marxism applied to other facets of society.
Yeah, it's just an insidious ideology all round. It's this idea that what really is fundamental to Marxism is the idea that there is no God, and because there's no God, we have to elevate the state to the position of divine. And this is it's not a good thing. I mean, even if you don't believe in God, you have to believe in a higher power than the state. You have to believe in some higher arbiter of what is true, what is good, and what is moral. Now, Stefan Molyneux's done great works on morality, and that's universally preferable behavior. I don't know. We have talked about it a little bit before on the live stream, I believe. But because not everyone's a philosopher, it's important to put something else there for people to understand. And because these Marxists have destroyed the idea of God, they're trying to replace it with something like, what's the arbiter of morality? And one thing that I'm constantly finding with especially leftists is the idea that the majority rules. Now, I saw an article today where apparently 80% of people think that religious schools shouldn't be able to discriminate and hire people who are like, they shouldn't be able to say they don't want to hire people if they're homosexual. Now, this is exactly what we warned about in the No campaign. And there was this poll saying 80% of people believe that schools shouldn't be allowed to do that. So what occurred to me is, first of all, the question's loaded. I mean, if the question was, should religious schools be able to run their schools based on their own religious beliefs, they might find it might be a little bit different. Secondly, the left were touting this as like, oh, look, the majority doesn't want them to do it, therefore they shouldn't do it. So I've asked a few people, well, if the majority of people said that murder was okay, would that make murder okay? And surprise, surprise, you never get an answer. And you can always tell you're beating a leftist because they don't answer your question. If a leftist doesn't answer your question directly, or they distract and move away and blah, 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 or they start making personal attacks after you've asked a simple question, you know you have hit on a logical inconsistency and they don't want to answer. So the fact, like, getting back to Marx, like, because Marx has got rid of God and they're trying to replace it with some sort of arbiter of morality, they can't find something because it can't be the majority, because obviously if the majority says murder is okay, that doesn't mean murder's okay. And obviously if you make it the state, if the state says something's okay, if the state says murder is okay, that doesn't mean murder's okay. So they really, it comes into this barrier of, if God isn't the arbiter of morality, if there isn't universal morality that is objective, then what do we define as moral?
Well, you're really hitting on just the core concepts of what makes people people, what makes civilization, what makes us survive, like what we really identify with. Things like God and culture and race, those are things which are eternal. And the left have deliberately attacked all of those as a way of supplanting them with their own ideas. That's clear. The thing which concerns me, because it's something that I've been thinking about quite a lot over the last year and a half, because what you're talking about there, like you're bringing up the logical fallacy of what's the name of it? The logical fallacy where, like, if something's popular, it doesn't necessarily make it right.
Argumentum ad populum.
There we go. Thank you. So does that bring into question the whole concept of democracy itself?
It does. Yeah. It does, because, and this is the problem with democracy, as I've made videos about, we've spoken about this before.
Yes.
Because in a democracy, all that happens is the minority vote the rights away of the majority vote away the rights of the minority. So the majority ultimately ends up picking the pocket of the productive minority. So the majority is not the arbiter of what is moral. What is moral is universal. And this is why I think, like, Stefan Molyneux really needs to get more of a plug for universally preferable behavior. This is an idea that will take off, I believe, eventually. Maybe not in our lifetime, hopefully within our lifetime, but maybe not. But because it actually proves secular morality, and it's a logical proof of morality, it could be a way of getting people to not have to automatically believe in a God to know what is moral. I mean, at the same time, it doesn't disprove the idea of a God, because morality is universal, and God could obviously have set the laws up to be set the laws of morality up to be universal, and the laws of God as defined in the Bible don't violate universally preferable behavior. In fact, they support it. So I think this is something that could get pushed a little bit more and could get explained a little bit more, because it is something that's hard for people to get their heads around. It took me quite a while to really understand it. I still don't understand it fully, I don't believe, but I understand it to the point where I can now explain it to people.
I think it's something which I think it's something which a lot of people who subscribe to individualism like sort of practice without necessarily having read Stefan Molyneux. I think a lot of people would practice a lot of what he talks about. That's my educated guess.
Well, yeah, a lot of the principles, like universally preferable behavior, essentially proves libertarianism and small government and all these kind of things are fundamentally correct. It also proves that Christianity is correct as well in a lot of ways. So that's what's great about it, because it is so effective at proving that kind of thing. The problem again is that because it's a little tough to get your head around, a lot of people take a lot of time to understand it, and it's hard to explain to people.
There's an IQ
even though
to it, yeah.
There is a bit of an IQ barrier to it, unfortunately, but at the same time, you can still explain it in a simple manner, and that is, what is moral is what is preferable for two people. So what is preferable for everyone? It's universal behavior. So behavior that is preferable for everyone to do all the time. That doesn't mean that the effects of this behavior are always going to be positive. Like if I make a choice to choose between one restaurant and another restaurant, obviously the restaurant that I don't choose is negatively affected by opportunity cost. But what's preferable is that I have the right to choose. So that's how you understand it.
So if we bring this back to the whole problem with democracy, do you think it's something that could... This is a big question. It's a loaded question. Do you think it's something that could save democracy? Because the way I see democracy headed at the moment, from an economic point of view, we've got countries going deeper and deeper into debt because we have the unproductive majority stealing money from the productive minority. And at the same time, we have all these different minorities in more and more atomized societies vying for power in the countries, and they're just driving their own agendas, and they're just clogging everything up, and they're just making democracy unworkable.
Well, it could save democracy it actually sets up a system of like, I don't want to, it's annoying to use the term the government and the state, but what it actually does is prove that just because the state does something doesn't make it okay. So a lot of the time, a lot of the actions of the state are premised on the fact the state has the monopoly right to use force. Therefore, it's okay when the state uses force. So, I mean, obviously, an example that I use a lot is taxation. So the state seems to have this idea that because it's the state, it has the right to steal our money from us. But what universally preferable behavior shows is that it doesn't. It doesn't have the right to steal our stuff. It doesn't have the right to murder citizens. It doesn't have the right to start aggressive wars. It doesn't have the right to do a lot of things. It doesn't have a right to let people abort their babies, because that is murder as well. Now, I mean, I don't want to get into a debate about all that kind of thing. I mean, abortion's a funny one. Abortion's a funny one because it's like, when does life start? Is it a conception or is it after the third? When it gets a heartbeat.
We differ on that one, but that's
well, that's the thing. I'm between, is it the heartbeat and is it conception? It's like, for me, it's like, which one? Because the odds of life after the heartbeat are significantly higher than they are when at conception, like significantly higher.
For me, I just say conception just because that's the simplest answer.
And I tend to lean towards that way as well. I do tend to lean towards that way, but I see the argument for the other side. So we won't get into that one. Someone in the, I want to read this comment out because the name is hilarious. It's read. The commenter is Dixie Normus. Has said murder is not okay because right and wrong is absolute and not relative. That's correct. Right and wrong is absolute and not relative, and that's like universally preferable behavior proves that. The 10 Commandments Actually, yeah, the Ten Commandments are a good start for finding out what is moral. And if you have a look at it in its entirety, it does actually give a pretty good guideline on how to conduct your way in to create a good society. And I think the evidence, the proof is in the pudding. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And societies that have used the Ten Commandments as their basis have been better than societies that haven't. So that's fairly good evidence there. Anyway, did you want to add anything else on the Karl Marxian, all that kind of stuff, or do you want to go into the next topic?
Oh, just dragging it on a little bit longer. I love the fact that like we've got stuck into Karl Marx, but we haven't been scared to like discuss solutions to the problem of, like the life, the universe, and everything as well. Like we're actually we're
solving the universe's issues, mate.
Yeah, that's it. So what worries me is that Karl Marx isn't the only Karl Marx who's ever existed. Like if you look at RK theory, the idea that like people actually have different genes in themselves, or different genes which can be switched on and off depending on their environment. If you consider the axiom that the greatest threat to civilization isn't outside barbarians, but the next generation of barbarians. If you think of like just the classic story of how Rome fell, Rome basically fell due to socialism. It was giving away free bread, and it could not get the resources to keep giving out that welfare, and they kept having to expand their territory, and the whole system just collapsed. I worry about the cycle of civilization. Good men lead to hard men lead to good times lead to soft men lead to hard times times lead to good men. That thing, the system of democracy, which has been in debates on the XYZ, like today, like the idea of a cycle of democracy leading to dictatorship, leading to autocracy, leading back to democracy, and that just goes round and round and round. So I worry that like what we're talking about here is just a cycle, and like universally preferable behavior is a great idea, but we're only going to get that every I don't know, like every 100 years or so, or maybe every 500 years.
Yeah, and it is something to worry about. And the thing is, it's such an obvious cycle of history too, and you see it all through history. Like you said, like Romans killed themselves based on welfare. Again, it's this Karl Marx, take from the rich, give to the poor rubbish. And again, it's the idea that it's okay for the state to steal, and it's okay for the state to murder, and it's okay for the state to do this, and it's okay for the state to do that, but it's not okay for people to do that. No. Morality doesn't work like that. Morality is universal, and the state is just people. The state is an abstract concept that people apply to an organization, another group of people. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Like what we've done is now the state is like, it can be interchangeable. Like you come out, one person comes out, another person goes in, and that's still the state. It's you've got the king, and the king is sovereign to the person. Like the king is above the person who operates the seat of king. But still, it's like morality doesn't change even though the king changes. This is the thing. This is the thing that I'm trying to get at, and this is the thing that we need to understand when we're thinking about how to organize society. And this is what I liked about Hilton's article today. I mean, I did comment, and we had a little bit of a discussion on it.
It's been really interesting. It's the sort of discussions that I've been wanting to see on XYZ for quite some time. It's been magnificent. Yeah. Keep it up, you guys. Like it's been awesome.
It's been great. And I mean, you saw my article the other day. I like Hilton's work. My issue with the piece today was his use of labels, and I think, but like his principles were correct, but the use of labels was incorrect, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to keep continuing. I'm publishing something about Impegates tomorrow morning, so it's just going to keep on going. It's just going to go back and forth. I'm loving it.
Has he mentioned me in his article? Has he responded to my article?
Yeah, he has. He's gone through. he's basically looked at your arguments. It's what I'm loving is the fact that it's like what people are looking at here are the arguments.
Good. Well, hopefully he makes some good arguments then.
Yeah.
Because I figured hopefully he makes some good arguments and it'll be interesting. I figured he'd like the stuff that I said about race and things like that. Because I mean, I agreed with Hilton on that. But anyway, I wanted to get back to what his arguments about democracy.
Yes,
so another thing that I was a little bit concerned with is he's got the idea that certain YouTubers like Sargon of Akkad and other people like that, or Jordan Peterson as well, wouldn't support the idea of only giving the vote to taxpayers, which is one way of stopping that state immoralities. I'd make taxpaying completely voluntary and come with the right to vote. So if you're in the private sector, you're not funded by the taxpayer, and you want to offer up, say the government says, all right, the rate is 5%. And everyone says, okay, I'll give 5% of my income or 10% of my income or whatever it is, and that will in return give me the right to vote, and you can opt out of that whenever you like. So I would think that would be a good way of stopping the immorality of the state, because it would make all taxation voluntary. I'd then make political donations only for individuals after that tax that they've taken out. So only individuals, not companies, nothing like that. But I mean, companies wouldn't be able to pay. Companies would have no tax as well. Obviously, maybe you could have a tariff on luxury goods if you really wanted to make some money, like a small tariff on luxury goods. If you really wanted to push it in the Minicus way, I'd not do that, because I think donations would be enough. But if it's not enough, then we'd be open for an argument. But yeah, so I think that would be a good way of solving this issue of immorality. And I think that Hilton was wrong to say that individuals wouldn't support a voluntary taxation, voluntary or vote in return for taxation system, because it is a good idea and it does actually solve the welfare for votes problem.
When I saw that argument, I knew that was an argument that you've actually made yourself. Whether it's something that a lot of Jordan Peterson fans would make is, we need data on that to know for sure.
We need some
data on that to know for sure, I think.
Just whether or not that people would pay taxation voluntary.
Yeah. Whether Peterson fans would agree with that argument, we'd need some data on that. It's something that I know Stefan Molyneux's made that argument. Going back to sort of Stefan Molyneux and the preferential behaviour and arguments about the state, I think it's if in 100 years' time Stefan Molyneux is remembered for one thing, it'll be like his arguments about the state. And the thing where we do agree here is that it's not identity politics or identity, or it's not religion that causes war and suffering and murder. It's not race that causes war and suffering and murder. It's the state. It's the state that kills the people. And that's the thing that we've really got to tackle.
Yeah, and that's why, Stefan Molyneux will likely be remembered for that, because that's where I've really been able to clarify all my views. And I instinctively knew that there was something wrong with what the government was doing and how the system was operating.
Yeah.
And the way he's articulated in that it's the state that's the problem. It's not just the concept of the state, because you do, I believe, need some sort of overriding body to administer contracts. So to administer contracts, mediate disputes, administer justice as well. So if you've got murderers, criminals, rapists, and all that kind of stuff, then you need some individual body to do that, some overriding body to actually function that. You need an overriding body for defense as well, because these are all public goods and all that kind of thing. And Stefan Molyneux goes to the full, basically anarcho-capitalist, no state kind of argument.
Yeah.
I actually think that's a little naive. I think the concept of the state and the idea of some sort of administrative body that helps administer certain aspects of society is inevitable. I think it's actually part of human nature. The problem
it's a recognition of the reality of force as well.
Well, that's right. And but the reality, the thing is, as we mentioned before, and as I said before, the state still subject to the same moral laws as everyone else. And this is what we've forgotten. It's like in the past, it was the state is still subject to the same moral laws, like the same laws of God as everyone else. So the king is subject to the law of God. Everyone is subject to the law of God. And because we've basically gotten rid of God, now all of a sudden the state is subject to no one. So the state is somehow allowed to do whatever it wants. And this was the problem with ancient Rome. And this is the problem with Rome, where the emperor was God. The emperor was God on earth, basically. So it was the same issue with Rome as well. And the problem is that, that because the state has assumed that position, there's nothing above it. There's nothing mediating this state, which acts as though it is God. It's the arbiter of life and death. It's allowed to steal from you. It's allowed to kill you. It's allowed to do all these kind of things. I mean, obviously, it's not killing us yet in Australia and in the West, but it is in other countries. Like, look at South Africa, look at Africa, China. You look at Asian countries where the state is committing horrendous acts of immorality.
It's killing us slowly in the West.
It is, yeah. It's killing us slowly, and I think someone sort of mentioned Opal News. I'm going to give him a plug again. Check out Opal News, hashtag Opal News on AUPOL News on Twitter. Doesn't immigration issue prove that we're not really a democracy? Constant and growing majority for cutting immigration, yet marginal representation, vested interests getting their way.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And this is a situation where it's not even like where the majority clearly want for immigration to be cut significantly, but it's not getting cut significantly because the people who are funding the political parties don't want it cut. And this is something that we could do immediately to solve a lot of the problems, and that would be to make political donations illegal unless you're an individual and it's out of your after-tax salary. So only individuals are allowed to make donations to political parties. No companies, no unions. Oh, we should tax the unions as well. But no companies, no unions, only individuals. That way, the political parties are fully answerable to the people. They won't get funding if they don't fulfill what the people want. And a big problem we've got in our democracy is those vested interests, is the big business. So the crony capitalists. Well, actually, we're not calling them crony capitalists, just crony corporatists. We don't want to besmirch the good name of capitalism. They are corporatists, which is essentially fascists, and the communist unions. So we got these two groups that basically dominating the political discourse behind the scenes.
If you look at the actual original decision to open up Western countries to immigration to the rest of the world, they were fundamentally undemocratic. Like, they were questions which were never put to the people. And if they had been put to the people, they would have said a resounding no.
Well, of course.
And in the case of England in particular, it was actually a fundamentally Marxist decision. The argument was made like explicitly by, I think it was Attlee, who was the Labour Prime Minister at the time, that if all the races were mixed together, there would be no war.
What a load of shit.
Yeah, it was a great example of how the narrative of World War II has been used by Marxists to really kill the West, because like we know that the actual reality of World War II was that it was caused by socialism, national socialism and international socialism. And then the socialists who were still in power at the end of it all used the argument of race and said it was all the fault of race. They scapegoated race and said, right, we're going to continue socialism. And they're basically continuing World War II to this day. Yeah,
and it's horrendously immoral. And they really, if there is any justice in the world, they really should be held to account.
Yeah.
I kind of hope that there's some sort of divine punishment for these people, because they really deserve it. Because they are the embodiment of evil. They're genuinely evil individuals who hate humanity. There is no other explanation for it. See, because I can understand that the people down the bottom, like the trogs and the grunts and all these kind of, the useful idiots, I can understand that they've been suckered and brainwashed. But the people at the top who know better, these are the people that are pushing this horrendously evil ideology on us. It's, Marxism is arguably the most evil ideology in history. I mean, second only to the religion that shall not be named. And that's only because it hasn't been around for as long.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, let's go on to the next question. So
when I go silent, it's because like you've just nailed it.
I've nailed it. I'm throwing out the truth bombs like it's World War Truth, aren't I?
They're truth nukes.
Truth nukes. Boom, taxation is theft.
Marxism is AIDS.
Marxism is evil. Yeah. Marxism is Satan. Morality is universal. Always all the truth bombs.
The last one? Yeah. The last one we'll have to do a whole podcast on that one, but anyway.
Yeah. Most likely. So let's come back into the now. I mean, it was the Australian budget this week, and you've done a little bit of reading. I've read a little bit up on it. I mean, I don't know how much we could add on to what the general mainstream media have said. Now, you wanted to mention something about a certain taxpayer-funded extortion racket / propaganda centre.
Yes, you may have heard of the ABC.
Oh, is that who you were talking about? I was thinking of the other extortion racket, the SBS, but you know.
Oh, well, I see them as one and the same entity.
Yes, yeah, I know. I was being facetious.
I just love the fact that the ABC, they've been complaining for a little while, and they're complaining in the wake of the budget. Basically, some of the ABC's funding has been indexed. The indexation has been frozen for the next 3 years. From my limited understanding of financial matters, what that means is that they're not going to increase the amount of money that they give to the ABC.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Yes.
That's correct.
That's correct. So, and then there's a little thing like at the bottom, because this is from the ABC, like they say, since 2014, the ABC has lost $241 million in funding. What they mean by that is that the government has refused to increase their funding by $241 million.
Yeah.
That is just, it shows, again, it's the either evil or stupid argument. Like either they have no concept of economics, or they know that that's actually what it is and they're saying it anyway.
It's self-interest.
Yeah.
In the case of the ABC, especially the upper management, it's pure immoral self-interest. They just want the extra cash, and there's no other explanation for it. They think they are entitled to the money of hardworking tax-paying Australians, even though they produce a dud product that no one watches. And I think this is the thing. This is why it's so bad that coalition governments and these so-called conservative governments haven't just taken them to task. Because look at how they bleat at the slightest cut. Look at this, just a tiny little cut, and they bleat like dying little lambs ready for the slaughter. Like they bleat like it's the worst thing in the history of things. Yeah. So why don't the coalition just say, you know what, if that's how you're going to bleat when all we're doing is putting in a few measly cost measures, we're just going to cut you off completely, and then just do it, and there's nothing they can do about it. Like just cut them off.
I think they would be surprised how popular a campaign promise that would be, just to destroy the ABC.
It would be amazing. And here's the thing. Remember, I think it was Michelle Guthrie's come out and said, oh, well, 80% of Australians support the ABC. It's like, bullcrap. I don't believe that, for one. And secondly, I think 80% of Australians just don't give a crap about the ABC, because 80% of Australians don't even watch it. So I think 80% of Australians would hear, wait a minute, oh, we're saving $1 billion on that monstrosity down the street. Great. That's a good idea anyway. I'm going to go back to doing this plumbing job that I've got to do because I have to pay my mortgage, which is ridiculous because the idiot government 20 years ago made my housing prices too expensive, and now they're making my power prices too much, and now they're bringing in 1 million immigrants that are sending my wages down. So good on you. Get rid of the ABC. Yeah. It's just, they're just elite inner city twats who are just completely disconnected to the real world, who think that they own taxpayer money and that they shouldn't be cut ever. Like, we should just get rid of it completely. Like, who are they? They are entitled. Yeah. They are. Yes.
I only tune in to get great ideas for fantastic articles with hilarious headlines. Something that I saw actually this morning on the ABC, because they were talking about two different polls that come out in the wake of the budget. In one budget, a news poll, like in the news poll, the support for Malcolm Turnbull has actually surged. And, you know, you can't argue with that. But then the way that the ABC presented that was they were like, well, there are two polls that have come out this week. There was one which came out in the Fairfax papers, where Malcolm Turnbull's popularity has plummeted. So I love this because, like, I of all people, you know how much I hate Malcolm Turnbull. And I've written articles about like the 30 News poll thing. I've made the argument that he made the argument about the 30 News poll, so it matters. And the ABC of all organisations has made a point about the 30 News polls.
Yeah.
But now that one news poll has come out in favour of Malcolm Turnbull, all of a sudden, oh well, it's contradicted by one from the Fairfax papers.
From the Fairfax. And did you see Bill Shorten's little faux pas this week?
No, please.
Did you see his little faux pas? Basically saying, well, the ABC helped Malcolm Turnbull get elected, and now he's heading the ABC.
Wow. Wow, he actually said it.
He actually said it.
Occasionally the truth comes out. Like that's the funny thing about the leftists. Their mouths just keep going. Exactly. And occasionally it's not that their brains switch off, but occasionally the truth comes out subliminally. It's fantastic.
Oh, it's just unbelievable. Like, yeah, exactly. They did help him. The ABC is biased. It's left-wing biased. Someone just asked the question, Iron 12, Iron 16 said, is Shorten any better? I think we can both agree pretty resoundingly that he's not. He's actually significantly worse than Turnbull, which is kind of sad if you think about it. Although here's the thing. Pauline Hanson was on Sky News today. And now my biggest problem with Pauline Hanson a lot of the time in the One Nation is their economic policies. But she was on Sky News today basically talking about how great tax cuts have been in America and how regulation cuts have made jobs come back. And I'm like,
I think she's been quite well educated recently.
Yeah. I think Pauline's been red-pilled by the internet. This is my secret theory that I think she's been YouTubed, because if she's spreading views like that, then it sounds like she's been YouTubed. And I can because I was YouTubed, like, because a lot of my views, like, obviously I was fairly libertarian before YouTube, but since I've gone to YouTube, it's like I've been able to listen to like 20 different people, get all these different ideas, read all these different books that are recommended and all that kind of thing. So I can recognize a YouTube view, like someone who gets a lot of their ideas from YouTube. I can recognize it very quickly. And I think she's been watching videos on YouTube, and I kind of secretly hope she's been watching my videos, but I don't know if that's the case.
She actually mentioned on Q&A like a couple of years ago, like she actually mentioned the XYZ. She said, I rather get my news from the XYZ, whether she tunes in on a regular basis or whether she just knows that we exist. So it's entirely possible, Maddie.
Well, Pauline, if you're listening to us, come on our show. We'd love to have you on.
That'd be amazing.
She's probably not listening.
Yeah, the entire show would be immigration. So.
It would. Well, that's our favourite topic apparently these days, because it's Australia's favourite topic. But here's the thing: it's not the politicians' favourite topic, nor is it big businesses' favourite topic or the big unions' favourite topic. So guess what? We don't talk about. But that's it's really interesting to see her actually come out, because a lot of One Nation's views, a lot of their policies, my issue with them is they're quite a bit too socialistic and too big government. But if she's out supporting tax cuts and supporting cuts to regulations and spending cuts, even, I think, she was talking about spending cuts as well, then this is someone that we should get around. I think it's because she's so vocal about the immigration thing and all that kind of, and all those kind of policies. I hope she does very well in the next election.
A political party which wants to stop immigration and wants to like reduce regulation and taxes would basically be the perfect political party.
Correct. It would be it's just a matter of getting the ideas out. It's just the issue that Pauline might have is those, like, she's well known and she's popular. Her delivery is, I don't know. It's sometimes I'm not 100% on her delivery, but it's at the same time her ideas are fine, and she's got a lot of experience as a politician, and she seems very down to earth to me as well. So that should just be my prejudice there.
She's got a really highly attuned bullshit meter.
That's true.
The best example I saw was when she was on Q&A with Dastiari, and Dastiari was waffling on. And then Pauline is like, she's like, the body language as well was amazing. She's like, "Are you a Muslim?" and so the thing was, everybody in the audience laughed And they were laughing at Pauline because they thought that Pauline didn't realize that Destiari was a Muslim. But Pauline was cued on to the fact that Destiari is a fake Muslim. He's like one of those people who he's happy to attach himself to the label when it's convenient for him, but he doesn't actually live that way. Like his family actually fled from Iran because I think they were dissidents and that sort of stuff. And he basically lives a secular life. And so she cued onto that. And this is a great example of how like she's onto that, and like her supporters are onto that, and they're onto the bullshit of Destiari. But all those lefties in the Q&A audience, they're dumb. They
are dumb. And here's the thing, like what's great about Pauline is she is clearly fulfilling one of the 48 laws of power. Have you ever read that book?
No, I've heard of it. Yeah.
I've read it twice. One of the laws in the 48 laws of power is always seems dumber than your mark. And I think Pauline,
Trump's read it about 5 times then, huh?
Trump knows that. Trump knows that. And I think Pauline, even if she's not doing it constantly, not that she's unintelligent, obviously, but I think a lot of it's almost like she's falling into accident with that because everyone thinks that she's stupid. All her political opponents believe that she's not very smart. So they think that they're smarter than her, but they're not smarter than her. So they end up making mistakes around her, which is good to see. That being said, I mean, someone's asked the question, does ALA have a preference deal with Pauline? Now, this gets onto the next topic. I mean, we didn't really talk about the budget all that much. I mean, I was just going to mention the tax cuts that they've proposed are way out into the future as well. And although the coalition did want to go towards more of a flat tax, or if we're going to have tax, it should always be flat. It's the only kind of fair tax.
There's going to be a rebate in the one coming up. There's going to be a small rebate or like a money back in the one coming up. And then they're introducing stuff from next year. But the last of it won't come through till either 22 or 24, and that's a long way off.
Yeah, that's right, and that's right. And who knows what's going to happen in that time? Like, if your LP get in, they'll raise taxes almost certainly, even though they say they're not going to. They'll cut income tax, but they'll put it up somewhere else by twice as much, obviously, because they're the Labor Party. So what I did want to say is that a couple of the things people have been complaining about is because Malcolm Turnbull wants to make it more of a flat tax, they're going, no, we can't get rid of our progressive tax system. And I think it's funny because in these days, whenever you hear the term progressive, it really just means communist. And that applies to the tax system as well. It is a communist tax system. If you're getting punished for earning more, it's communist. But anyway,
yes,
that's pretty much all we had to say about the budget. Ultimately, I think it's a bit of a nothing budget. They could have done better. They could have cut spending more, but this is about what you'd expect these days. The fact that it is such a nothing budget is a sad indictment on the Australian system right now. Like, if you really look at it objectively, it's a horrendous budget. It's full of taxes and spending. It's really, really bad. But compared to last year, it's about the same as last year. So what are we going to do? So I just wanted to get on, because we're on the topic of Pauline Hanson, and someone asked the question about Pauline Hanson's preferences. Now, you mentioned before the show that you hadn't actually heard this. Pauline Hanson sent a letter to Bill Shorten during the week saying that if you don't preference the Greens last, because as you know, One Nation are big on coal power and baseload energy, another thing that's going to win them votes, I believe. She's gone to Bill Shorten and said, you have to preference the Greens last, or we are going to preference you last. And Bill Shorten has come back with his answer, but I wanted to see what you thought about that, and then I'll come back and let you know the answer that Bill Shorten has responded with.
Yeah, that's 20 years of political experience right there. She knows exactly what she's doing.
Yep.
Again, you look at the Destiari thing, you look at the Burqa stunt. She understands political theatre about it, possibly better than any other politician in Australia right now. I might be just bullshitting there, but she really understands.
Come on our show,
but she really understands.
Come on our show.
She understands political theatre. She understands power, like you were saying. That's just magnificent. The fact that she's made it public as well, that is awesome. So what was Bill Shorten's response?
So what do you think Bill Shorten's response would be?
Oh, basically to complain. It's because like he's made a really big deal about like the coalition preferencing and or maybe preferencing like parties like Australian Conservatives or even won't, like, heaven forbid, the ALA. So naturally, I'm assuming that like his answer would be extremely hypocritical.
Oh, of course, it was extremely hypocritical. But I mean, here's the thing. I'm not going to. The thing is, I've actually because I've read the response. Because I've actually read the response. It's I don't want to seem like I'm absolutely properly bragging or anything like that, but I did actually predict exactly what Bill Shorten's response was going to be.
Yeah, right.
And the reason I predicted Bill Shorten's response is because of game theory, and it was really the only strategic response that he could have. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what his response was, because all that ultimately means is that One Nation's going to put the ALP last. It doesn't, because for the ALP, for One Nation, it doesn't matter where they put one. It doesn't matter where the ALP put One Nation. It does matter where One Nation put the ALP, because of the way that our system works. So Bill Shorten's really on the horns there. For anyone who doesn't understand, that's the horns of a dilemma. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share the screen with everyone, and I'll read it out. I'll read the letter and I'll read the response. Where's share screen? There it is. So this is something that I would like to do a little bit more with the live streams, because it's a little bit more interesting. And can everyone see that? So, dear Mr. Shorten, in previous elections, I won't read it out. So she's basically said what I said before, and his response: Dear Pauline, I know you are under a lot of pressure following your decision to support the Prime Minister's $80 billion tax handout to multinationals and the big banks. Right off the bat, look what we've got from Bill Shorten. Marxist, you blah, blah, blah. Exactly what you'd expect from Bill Shorten, the supreme virtue signaler Marxist who couldn't make a good argument, so has to attack her, and at the same time called tax cuts, which is actually just letting people keep their own money, a big handout. So this is just something that the left really love doing now. That's the only explanation I can think of for your letter to me, in which you appear to be attempting to direct the preferences of Longman voters to the LNP, which is another complete load of crap. Maybe she's just trying to get you to not preference the Greens first because she doesn't like the Greens. You spastic, Bill. Instead of standing up for working Australians and their families, you've teamed up with Mr. Turnbull to help billionaires while Queensland schools and hospitals suffer massive cuts. Again, like I said, just complaining, going out and attacking her. Attack, 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 attack. When Queenslanders voted for you in the last election, you should have been honest with them about your true intentions. Coming from Bill Shorten, the biggest liar in history, the guy who said that there were some rock-solid practices in place to stop citizenship issues. You should have told them you would vote with Turnbull 90% of the time. Now they know you're 90% Liberal and Turnbull's #1 ally in Canberra. Now, she was on Sky News today explaining that they'd actually voted with the ALP 30% of the time. So here is yet another lie from Bill Shorten, who is either lying or just doesn't know the numbers. And the fact that this letter was going to be public, you'd think he'd actually go and work out what the numbers were. Obviously, he realizes that his core support don't care if he lies. You've supported his tax cuts to services, as well as his attacks on penalty rates and protections in the workplace. Let's not forget that it was Bill Shorten who actually supported those cuts as well, and minimum wages are immoral and keep people out of work. Discussion for another time. And now you're supporting his $80 billion tax handout, as he says, to big businesses, including $17 billion to the big banks. Again, he calls tax cuts, which is letting people keep their own money, a handout, something that is completely and utterly incorrect. It's false. It's a lie. It's worse than false. It is flat out manipulation. It's flat out Orwellian doublespeak, and he really needs to be called out on it. It just shows you exactly the kind of flog that Bill Shorten is. Sadly, you've put the top end of town first and Aussie battlers last, so that's where Australian Labor will put One Nation last in our preferences at the next election. Your voting record in Canberra has left us no choice, blah, 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 blah. So, again, this is exactly what I expected him to say. I'm going to put you last, but again, it doesn't matter for One Nation because One Nation. The ALP need One Nation preferences more than One Nation need ALP preferences. So I mean, Bill Shorten's just had a massive dummy spit there, and that's what it looks like to me. It looks like a massive dummy spit. It's the only strategy he had, unless he wanted to put the Greens last, in which case, he's not going to do that because he's a coward. He could do that if he really wanted to, and he should do that if the ALP actually cared about the nation and about the long-term survival of their party and their voters' well-being, of course. But they were never going to do that. He was never going to put the Greens last. So basically, Pauline Hanson's done really well there. She's outed Bill Shorten for the lying little snake that he is, and basically giving herself a really good excuse to put them last. So if you remember the issue with, I think it was WA, there was that big question, the preference debacle. Now the issue of preferences is basically solved. So she's done that. She's like, well, we're just going to put the ALP last. Done, dusted. We gave the ALP the option, and that's what we're going to do. And she doesn't even have to worry about it. So I do think you're probably at least partly on the track, if not you're fully on the track, when you say that Pauline Hanson understands politics, because to me that looks like that looks like she knows what she's doing. That looks like she knows that if she does this, Bill Shorten is forced to make her last. Therefore, all she has to do is put them last, and then the question's over. And then if it ever gets brought up again, well, we asked Bill Shorten, and he said no. So what are you going to do about it?
It's chess. It's brilliant chess. There's that fantastic. We were just talking about the ABC complaining that stopping increasing their budget, they see that as budget cuts, and here the ALP is referring to a tax cut as a handout. It really reveals the mindset of the left, and it's why we want the left to keep talking, because if they really do see that money as their money. They see themselves as entitled to other people's money. It's a great, again, it's like we talk about how like the truth comes out subliminally. It's really revealed their whole outlook on life and on politics and on how things should be run.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And here's the thing, like, to me, when I see them doing that, it seems like they're dog whistling to the far left. Like they're saying, vote for us. Like they're dog whistling to Green voters. They want Green voters to come. Come on, Green voters, Green voters, Green voters. But at the same time, they're selling out ordinary Australians, because every ordinary Australian, everyone with more than half a brain who actually works for themselves, knows that tax cuts are just you keeping your own money. Everyone knows that. And when he does that, it's like he just looks silly. Now, someone, I'll pull on news again, and said the more Shorten is seen by the public, the less popular he becomes. I agree. The problem is that Turnbull is also unpopular, and all the coalition would need to do is actually put a proper, genuine conservative in, and they'd probably romp at home because Shorten is so horrendous. I don't think they can actually go back to Abbott now. The biggest problem is that they don't have a genuine conservative alternative, which means I get the feeling that the next election it is going to be. This is a prediction now. This is one. I mean, this is what I think is based on the flow right now, and based on what people are talking about and who's talking about what. I get the feeling that the Liberals and the ALP are both going to get quite low primary votes, and most people are going to vote again for minor parties, with One Nation probably getting upwards of 10% of that. They might not win seats in the lower house, but if they get 10% of the vote, they'll win the balance of power in the upper house. So they'll be dealing with One Nation anyway. So that means Pauline Hanson can just tell them where to go and say, well, we're not going to do this unless you cut immigration. It's like, just you cut immigration. All you have to do is cut immigration. And because she's so actually genuinely attuned to the people, we might actually get something done in the next parliament, even if Bill Shorten does ultimately become Prime Minister. Yeah. But yeah, that's what I potentially think will happen.
For me, actually, an ideal situation now, especially that fake marriage has been pushed through, because that was like, I actually argued, look, we've been arguing that we should destroy the Liberal Party so something can be built from its ashes. But then I was like, well, if Labor gets in, then fake marriage is going to come through. Fake marriage has come through anyway, so we've crossed that bridge. So for me, possibly an ideal situation would be for Labor to get in, to really give the Liberal Party a bloody nose, and either destroy the Liberal Party and actually create a new Conservative Party, or reform the Liberal Party so that it can actually become like a real Conservative Party again. But with One Nation having a majority in the Senate, a majority. Oh my God, that would be a dream. But
imagine that.
Having the balance of power in the Senate, so whoever is in power has to deal with them and has to actually put in One Nation policies, because they would actually be able to dictate government policy. And
exactly,
that would be revolutionary.
And it would be ironic. It would be ironic given the fact that that they'd be a minority, essentially speaking for the majority. And as we were talking about before, in that the major parties have really abandoned the majority of Australia on immigration, so they would be a minority party speaking for the majority. And what I would think would be ideal is if the Liberal Democratic Party win a couple of seats in the Senate.
Oh yeah.
So the One Nation so they have the balance of power with One Nation, and we can get some libertarian policies through as well. And it's just basically tell the ALP Greens to shove off, and the coalition can set about actually turning themselves into a party that people want to vote for again.
Yeah.
Which would be ideal. It's just the real question is how much damage is going to be done before we can actually start to fix the problems. Yeah,
we're on that cycle, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it's like, now I did want to mention one thing, because like I thought it was a really good line from Malcolm Turnbull, actually, because Bill Shorten, he's had a bit of a bad week, as we can all imagine. He's had these 5 now. I think 2 more of their MPs potentially going to have high court issues with their citizenship after he said we've got ironclad processes in place. I can promise you that there's going to be no issues with our citizenship. We're the ALP and we're honest and we never lie unless we're trying to win an election, in which case we'll lie constantly. And Malcolm Turnbull's come out and called him Unbelievable.
That's magnificent. That's magnificent.
I thought it was hilarious.
I thought the biggest concern for Labor at the moment is that, like, now that North Korea is making overtures of peace, like the only countries they really have left are Cuba or Venezuela to actually owe allegiance to.
Yeah, that's true. And Venezuela is basically going to collapse pretty soon anyway.
I think the only foreign allegiance that Labor Party politicians have left then is Cuba. Cuba, and
isn't Cuba like also liberalizing its markets as well? I don't know. This might be just a rumor that I heard.
All I know is that Cuba actually gets like a huge amount of food relief from the United States.
Okay, yeah. Well, either way, but I mean, the problem is if we don't have a genuine socialist or communist disaster to point to, communists tend to come in and say, "Well, communism hasn't been tried before." But then again, like South Africa's next on the list, as we've discussed plenty of times before, which is really unfortunate. There's a bit of a movement to make the Cape area, so that's Cape Town. I think that's in the West, an independent state, which I think would be kind of good for them. I know South Africa is not really on the cards for topics tonight, but it just came up. So are there any questions from the audience? By the way, so Gary's just said Cuba's moving on from the Castros. I might read up to that. I'll read into that because I do believe that Cuba is actually starting to liberalize their markets. I think they might be getting away from the communism, which is good for them. Really, really good for them. I mean, there are lots of South American countries. Well, not lots. There's been a few South American countries that have gone away from the communism, which is good. Colombia and Chile are notable examples, but there are surely other countries that are going to start changing their ways. People are starting to realize that capitalism is actually a pretty good thing.
Yeah,
it's a pretty good thing.
And helicopters. Maybe Cuba could get a few helicopters.
Maybe. They don't do it with helicopters. They do it with pirate vessels. They take them out on the ocean with these big massive sails. Like, do you want to have a roll on my sailing boat? They make them walk the plank. That's how they do it there. Let's see. Someone's how to get rid of the party duopoly. This is essentially what we've been talking about. I think you can't just get rid of it. It has to kill itself. So the parties have to destroy themselves.
There's
It's like the
historical
old
precedent for that.
Yeah, there is. And here's the thing, like the last time the major party died was when the major party primary vote was combined for both two parties was basically what it is now. So less than 70%. And this is when the Liberal National, the coalition actually formed, the Liberal Party actually formed of Menzies. And so there is definitely a historical precedent, but it's a matter of them destroying themselves.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is a really big opportunity for Conservatives to actually, either form a new party or to reform the Liberal Party. Like, what's really important for me is that these minor parties start to sort of coalesce. I can see maybe the Australian Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats working together. There's been one amalgamation already. And ALA, like to me, they could fit well with One Nation, especially like ALA. Their economic policy isn't perfect, but they are pro free market, and if One Nation, if they're becoming more red pilled on economics, then that could be a good fit as well. To me, I don't see the point of having two anti-Islamic parties in Australia. That doesn't make sense. And then you have the Australian Conservatives and Liberal Democrats, and they're basically that they hold to individualist, libertarian, sort of straight down the line conservative views. Like that seems to be doubling up to me as well. They really need to work together to at least form a bloc and really put pressure on the Liberal Party.
Yeah, and right now I think it's sort of happening kind of on its own. Like you said, the Conservatives and Family First have merged.
That's the one, yeah.
One Nation's sort of making a surge. The Liberal Democratic Party it's won 2 seats twice in a row now, and nearly won a second and a third last election. So that's something there. It's going to be a matter of the Liberal Party basically imploding before something happens, and then the ducks will fall, or the chips will fall where they may. Now, someone else has asked the question. Gary's asked, should Trump have moved away from the Iran deal? Now, I'm not totally confident on answering this question because I'm not all up to speed on exactly what I read about it. Like when Obama put it in, I read about it then, but that was 6 years ago. So it's kind of slipped my memory exactly what it was. It allowed them to enrich uranium, didn't it? And he's basically said that they're not allowed to do that.
Yeah. The way that inspections of countries with nuclear power stations work is that, like, when you look at the detail, like, there's a lot of bureaucratic excuses that a country can make for why the inspectors can't inspect this place on this day or this place on another day. Richard Butler, who was the head of one of the inspection teams in Iraq during the 1990s, he's written about his experiences. And Tariq Ali, I'm thinking of a communist. Basically, the guy who was in charge of the program was he was always obfuscating and always just finding a way around. And it was one of the main reasons why I believed that Iraq still had weapons of mass destruction, because they were going to such great lengths to make it look like they were trying to hide something. And so, if you're allowing a country like Iran, who have said time and time again, like not just from its leaders, but from so many of its other political and military leaders, that they want to wipe Israel off the map, to have a nuclear program. And there's just experience for the last few decades of weapons inspectors just being given the runaround. You have the example of North Korea, who supposedly had a peaceful nuclear power program, but were able to turn that into a weapons program. There's every reason to believe that Iran's going to be able to make nuclear weapons if it's allowed to have nuclear power. And so, yeah, basically the argument has been, if people have looked at the deal with Iran and have said for years, look, it's just going to slow them down just a little bit. They're still going to get nukes. So I think it's tremendous that Trump has walked away from the deal, because he's putting pressure on Iran now. Like, what I see him doing is exactly the same playbook that he was using for North Korea. I've made the argument that he was using what was going on in Syria to put pressure on North Korea to make it look like his word matters. And so then, even like, I know there's been like an intensification of stuff going on in Syria. Israel's been making strikes. I know like some people on the XYZ are worried about World War III and all that sort of stuff. To me, all I see this as pressure being mounted on Iran. Just like you've got a more aggressive Israel, you've got Iran going at them, but like then you've got Donald Trump walking away from the deal. Iran knows that all of a sudden the situation has changed. He's changed the equation. He's changed reality, and they're going to actually have to adjust. They're going to basically, I think I see Trump. He's just going to move them around wherever he wants them to go.
And that's a pretty good answer, and I won't really expand on the nuclear deal and all that kind of thing. In that regards, Trump has proven himself trustworthy on foreign policy so far, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I wasn't happy with the Syria strikes, but the North Korea piece has sort of made up for that. It's like, well, okay, I'll give you that one, mate. You did, that's one's not ideal, but the other, it's like -1 + 10. So well done. One thing I'll add to the Iran deal is Iran is seeing quite a bit of internal conflict at the moment as well. So they're having protests every single day. They're trying to hide it as much as they can, but Iran does have quite a bit of internal civil unrest. So Trump's really putting them under pressure at a time when they probably don't want to be under pressure. And it will be interesting to see what happens. I believe this now means China are going to be Iran's biggest trading partner. I watched an expert's basically made that prediction that China are happy because now China can sell them a whole lot of stuff. But yeah, I think this. I mean, I ultimately trust Trump to do a pretty good job on this issue because he's proven himself to be a pretty good negotiator for decades now, and now he's proven it on foreign policy.
So would you say that you're maybe not completely on the 4D chess bandwagon, but you understand that it actually could be a thing?
Oh, I've always thought that the 4D chess could be a thing. I've always sort of given him the benefit of the doubt. The Syria strike, it just seemed a little bit unnecessary to me. And especially considering that it was based on what is now shown to be what was a hoax. But that being said, it could well have been Donald Trump just dropping bombs on Syria, on empty Syrian buildings and putting pressure on Iran and North Korea in that regards. But either way, like, the results are what matters. And if he's going to get results, if he's going to get North Korea to come to the party, and if he's going to ultimately also get Iran to come to the party, then that's a good thing. Like, that's a good thing. If he's able to do that with as little carnage as possible, then good on him. There was another one. So Iron 16's asked again, if you were to advise to vote for a party, who would it be? No point spreading around to the minor parties because the big ones get the preferences. Now, your point on preference, so it's no point spreading votes between minor parties as they all go to biggies by preference. Get rid of preference votes, I reckon. So to answer your first question, if you were to advise a party to vote for, so I vote for the Liberal Democratic Party, who are a libertarian party, and I'll also be giving One Nation. This is in the Senate, by the way, because in the Senate you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't have to vote for the big parties in the Senate, which is good. So I'll just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that order. Like, we'll probably LDP, One Nation, ALA, Conservatives, and then 2 others, whoever I feel like voting for on the day. Maybe like the Shooters Party or something like that, because they believe in no gun control. In terms of getting rid of preferences, I think it would be a good idea to make preferences voluntary. Voting should be voluntary, completely voluntary. And as we were mentioning before, I think Iron 16, you weren't actually here when we said this, but we think that voting should be voluntary and should come with taxation. So you volunteer your money as taxation, and you get the right to vote in return. So that would be my policy, my idea on that.
I did something very similar. In the Senate, I put One Nation first, and then from there, I can't remember who was after that. I think there would have been the Liberal Democrats, the Australian Conservatives, ALA, and maybe one or two of the other minor parties who I identify with and agree with. And I don't think I put any of the majors in there. I didn't put Liberal or Labor or the Greens.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the House of Representatives, I just living where I was, I didn't have many options. I think I put an independent, and I may have been able to put one of the minor parties as 1 and 2, and then I would have had Liberal as 3, and then Labor, Greens, and Socialist Alliance after that. So I still preference Liberal before Labor. I couldn't bring myself to preference them afterwards, but
Well,
again, that's just because I had to do that way.
Yeah. So Gary's asked. That being said, this is on Iran. Why has Australia expressed disappointment in Trump's approach to Iran?
Because Turnbull's a dickhead.
Yeah, that would be my answer. Turnbull's virtue.
Who doesn't understand power?
Turnbull doesn't understand power. Turnbull gets his cues from the mainstream media, and the mainstream media are constantly saying how bad Trump is. So Turnbull is just virtue signaling to the mainstream media in that regards, I would imagine. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't. I don't think Turnbull knows what he's doing. I don't think he has a clue how to be a prime minister. I think he just wants to be prime minister, and that's it. Like that's his thing.
That's what it was. He was just like, "Hey, I want to be this, and so I will." And then he doesn't know what to do when he gets there.
Oh, one thing that we could mention is the US embassy's moving to Jerusalem, I believe tomorrow or the next day. We're like pretty soon.
Right. More Ford HS. It's giving Donald Trump another bargaining chip. Like
I love that.
He will quite happily move it away from Jerusalem if it gets, if it helps to get a deal in Israel between Israel and the Palestinian territories. Like it's literally just another bargaining chip.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I think it's great that he's just done it. He's like, what you can say with Donald Trump is he's not cowardly, is he? He's like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it, and I don't care what the media says. And that's what's great because the media have been so relentlessly negative, and he succeeded in spite of that. There's no incentive for him to do anything that the media says or to even give a crap what the media says because he knows that he can just, people are going to judge me by the results of my actions. Therefore, I'm going to act as though the results of my actions are the number one thing that concerns people. Yeah.
Donald Trump is a Donald Trumpist.
He's
not a conservative or a libertarian or he's or even a nationalist. He's a Donald Trumpist. And he knows exactly what he's doing. Like he's got his plays all worked out.
I think he's doing what's best for America and what he believes is best for America, which is fantastic. I wish there would be more leaders that would just do what was best for their country and the people in their country, because a lot of our leaders right now, especially in Australia, are just more interested in what's good for themselves. They don't really give two craps what matters to the people in the nation. All Bill Shorten cares about is himself and unions. And all Malcolm Turnbull cares about is being prime minister. So that's where their priorities lie.
Yeah, I've got one fear with Malcolm Turnbull. He hasn't given up on that republic either. I know. I think that's actually, to me, I think that's his number one goal, and I think he's going to still try to push. If he wins the next election, watch out for a really, really big push.
Someone just mentioned immigration reduced to 75,000. Sydney suburbs are overflowing, and I'm an immigrant from the 80s era. Yeah. So, I mean, the one issue I'd have there is 75,000 still too high. It should be it should be below 20,000 max.
Maybe 5,000.
Absolute max. Maybe really, really little. Families only if you have a child with an Australian citizen that's living in Australia who is an Australian citizen. That's it. Yeah, that's it. You have a child with an Australian citizen who is also an Australian citizen, then you may move to Australia because, we'll keep the families together. And, if it's not an Australian citizen, then the Australian citizen can move over there. And that's, there's just too many people coming to the nation. Anyway, I think we'll call it. I think we've gone good.
Good hour and a half.
Yeah, good hour and a half. I think we've had some really good chats, some really good questions. Didn't have a guest on this week. Our guest pulled out, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll have someone on next week, but it doesn't really matter because me and Dave can just yarn about immigration for an hour and a half with our eyes closed.
3 hours.
3 hours we could talk about reducing immigration and just constantly talking about how high immigration is and how ridiculous it is that our cities are just overflowing with people right now.
Yeah,
like, come on, it takes me. The other day, I literally drove up the street and then back again. It took me 30 minutes. It would have taken me less time to walk. It's like just because of the traffic. I'm like, come on, this is a joke. Why are there so many people in my city?
The thing that's really making me mad at the moment is that all the lefties sort of in the inner north, they were complaining about what was like the tunnel that was going to be built, that really should be built. And they were complaining about the parkland, which is like on Alexander Parade, they were complaining about what was going to happen to that parkland and it was all going to become a construction zone. They're not building the tunnel, but like the median strips along Alexander Parade, they're all construction zones. I don't see any lefties complaining about it now.
Yeah, and East-West Link obviously was, that would have helped. But even then, the problem isn't a lack of infrastructure. It's just too many people using the infrastructure that we've already got.
Yes.
Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to check us out. I'm not on Twitter, but follow XYZ on Twitter. Follow me on Gab Minds. Follow me on BitChute as well. I will tell everyone here, because everyone here who's watching till the end, I do have a secret Twitter account. If you're a fan of my work, you'll know exactly who it is when you say it. It's hilarious, this Twitter account. I'm basically a truth bot. That's a clue. I am a truth bot, and it's really fun pissing off lefties with the truth in a completely dispassionate way. It just shows that I'm triggering them even more. I'm not laughing at them. I'm not insulting them. I'm not calling them stupid. I'm literally just making statements of fact and arguments and calling them out on their bullshit, and they are absolutely hating me. It's fantastic. But anyway, come on, Gab. Come on, Minds. Oh, yeah, follow XYZ on Facebook if you're still on Zuckerberg.
We're on Facebook. We're on Minds. We're on Gab.
Check out obviously the XYZ's main site. I've set it as my homepage, and so should you, because it's an amazing website full of great content and discussion. And I'll see you when I see you. And go the Hawks.
Go the D's.
No, not the D's.
I think